Hello, hello. Another day,
Hello.
another show. How are you doing, Fernando?
I'm doing great. How are you, Andrey?
I'm pumped. I'm pumped to have this recording going, and we're going to
Nice.
be shifting a little bit the context of it. And today we're going to start with the news, a little bit of news in Agentic world. What hit your radar, Fernando, last week?
What I saw last week that was over the weekend now popping up a lot was the new releases from Anthropic. One of them was the Claude Dispatch.
What is that?
So apparently, I think with all the hype that happened with OpenClaw, right, that project that brought the Agentic AI, let's say, to common people, let's say, they create this way now, like this mechanism, basically, that through the Claude app on your phone, you can trigger the Claude co-work on your machine, right? So if you have the Claude app and your machine is running, the example they give is like, imagine that you're going to work, you're commuting, and then you can already tell Claude, I start reviewing these files, and prepare a report for me. So when you sit at your desk, Claude already did some stuff for you based on the data, and then you can just continue that chat.
Right.
So it's cool, right? Like it's a way to start working on the go and continue that when you sit. So it was an interesting one. I haven't explored it myself, but it looks like a cool release.
I actually did spend some time with a co-work this weekend,
Yeah.
but not with that feature. But I think they did release something like that for Techie as well, right? There is a similar integration for Cloud Code.
Yeah, they're calling it channels, and now you can basically connect a Cloud Code session with Telegram or with Discord, and then you can basically continue the session now on your phone the same way, right? So all of this still depends on your machine being running or whatever machine where you have Cloud Code installed. But it's already that idea, because I think now I was talking to some friends that are also using Agentic AI as part of development workflow. And they're like, man, what I want is for it to not need me to sit in front of the laptop. Like, how can I be on the go and still maybe say like, hey, go and check this, right? So that's becoming a thing now, like natively supported, right? You could do this maybe with OpenClaw, but there was always these discussions about security and all these. Like, this is now kind of a, let's say, officially supported way to do it through Anthropic.
I wonder
but you
why
still
they
need to
haven't
watch
done
out
it through the app. Like if they did it through the co-work in the app, why not to do the same for Cloud Code and app?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Yeah, I haven't thought about that. Indeed, I don't know. I think there are a lot of developers that use Telegram, right? Maybe they try to go with the ecosystem where people are ready to talk about tech. But that's a good point. Yeah, I'm not
because
sure.
like all those Discord and Telegram integrations, I'm a little bit cagey about them, since technically it's open up possibility to get someone in there. Like if you coming in there, I'm not really sure what the security model that prevents people from interacting with those bots being published on a Telegram and Discord. I haven't looked into that, but like security model is a little bit unclear to me.
Yeah, and then the first thing I saw there, like they work with allow list is one of the ways. So similar to OpenClaw, you can say like, hey, just this chat ID can actually talk to you. But that is definitely one of the big things with this, right? As soon as you have on your phone a chat interface that can actually act on your machine, right, and have access to stuff, if someone gets a hold of that, it's now your password. It doesn't matter, right? If the machine is running and someone has access to that channel, so you need to watch out. I think this is the trade-off of all of these things, right? Convenience, but at the same time, then security becomes a risk again, right? When you open up yourself.
Don't invite people to your machines. And while we are on the OpenClaw team, while we're mentioning it, I think Anthropic banned you from using the subscription for OpenClaw. Now it's like in terms of service.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were trying, because there was all these horror stories, right, of like a token consumption, like OpenClaw running the whole night, and then you get like a $10,000 bill And then people indeed try to create these wrappers around the cloud subscription, so they could use their Cloud Max, like pay $200 and then you can do a lot. But of course, Anthropic wants now you to use their tools, right, and protect their models. So they put indeed in the terms and conditions that it's not allowed. I haven't read to see like what are the implications, right? But indeed, they updated, and I guess maybe other providers are going to do the same. And now you do officially have to use the API keys, right? So you pay per token and not with the subscription.
Yeah, exactly. They did the same for the open code. So obviously, when terms of conditions wasn't written explicitly, those tools did not exist. So now when they kind of constantly updating the terms of conditions as new ways of consuming models comes online, and obviously they want you to stay within their ecosystem and not cause excessive tokens burn for no good reason. Interestingly enough, OpenAI is either being slow or just trying to play competitively here and say like, well, they haven't updated their terms of conditions just yet, and like generally they also have a little bit higher usage limits comparing to Anthropic. So I guess that's maybe their counter-positioning there, trying to get people to use the tool more. Enough of Anthropic. There are other companies on the radar. We also have the Cursor that made some splashes last week. They actually have their own model called Composer 2.0 being released. They had like 1 and then 1.5. The cadence seems to be matching the Frontier Labs, so it's about every 3 to 4 months they update the model. I said their own model, and like me being a Cursor fanboy, that's like what I wanted to believe. But then also during the weekend, it came to light that they haven't been fully transparent in their release, that the model itself is actually based on open source model called Kimi K2.5. And it came to the light in a funny way because like the Moonshot AI, the company behind that model, kind of came out on the Twitter saying like, congratulations to the Cursor team for picking our model and building on top of them. And very good. But it's obviously not just Kimi K2 model. They did quite a bit of reinforcement learning on top of that and fine-tuning. Since I really like where the Cursor is. I mean, they were like one of the first movers. They have a lot of coding data, and they have a very narrow focus, which allows them to actually zero in on the model and make it really good for coding without actually caring about all that other stuff that like labs like Anthropic need to care. I mean, like legal and everything. They even released the benchmark, like Cursor bench, and like obviously Composer 2.0 is beating
like there, right?
Other providers, like no surprises there. They also quite high, like the same high as like OpenAI and Anthropic on other benchmarks, at least based on their measurements. So take that with a grain of salt, and also account for the fact that people will be gaming all those benchmarks. So, but I did test it. So I actually was running that as my daily driver for 2 days. It's fast, as I can tell you. Like, first, it's cheap. It's like cheaper than Opus 4.6, obviously. And it's way fast. I mean, like just screamingly fast, spewing the code out to you, which is like when you want to do something very straightforward where you don't need to think much about it. I mean, that's beneficial. And also all the agentic capabilities there, like tool calling. Kimi is actually well known for that being the case with them. So like the terminal use and all of that is better than comparing to like Anthropic, for instance. I actually tried to use it for the for the tool that we are building, the Boris, which we're going to talk a little bit in a sec,
Yeah.
on the Bedrock, trying to see if it could compare to Haiku, for instance, because like speed is very important for the agentic tools, because you don't want to wait for the tool to do like 50, 70 calls. And like if it's doing it very, very slow, then you're waiting very, very long. And so that's why like speed matters really for the agentic tools. But it's kind of funny the way Kimi is being supported on the Bedrock, because the agent loop returns some messages in a different format, and then like the Strands framework is actually being confused. So Strands framework thinks that the agentic loop finished, which is not. It's basically confusing the tool calls with the finish of the agentic loop. And that's like an old issue. There are like issues on the GitHub. So like the Kimi on the Bedrock is
a bit
hit and miss, depending on the support from the framework you use. But that was like my experience. I would love to use Kimi more, but I'm limited with that.
I haven't tried Kimi at all, and for Cursor I used to use it heavily, and I think 3 months ago maybe I switched to Cloud Code, and then I'm very like, yeah, okay, this is really next level thing, but the cost is indeed always that factor. So now with Composer 2 I will give it a try again to see, because I liked like Cursor for me was also like, man, this is really nice, like very streamlined, works super well. So great to hear that you had a good experience. I will give it a try.
Yeah, talking about our experiences, so you might be wondering who we are and where we gained this experience to talk about agentic systems in DevOps. We are actually building the tool that we promised to talk more about in our previous recording. The tool is lives at the getboris.ai website, which if you navigate there, you will see that this is AI DevOps teammate who is focused on AWS infrastructure for the startups. And you can even give it a try for free on the website. You will see the button saying join Boris Slack Playground. And if you do that, that will bring you to the Slack Playground we have, where Boris is already configured. It connected to the AWS organization running some services. It configured, it connected to the GitHub with the source code for those services. And you can play around and explore on your own. So that's available. With this, I suggest we move on to the main topic of today, which we should have probably announced in the beginning, but let's do it now.
All right, yeah. So today I did, last week we did that run through of different tools, and we kept mentioning one term that we're going to talk a bit about it next time, which is the context, right? Like, and if you have been looking to agentic AI and AI in general, you probably have heard a lot of this context window. You need to give it context, you need to manage context, right? So this is always a topic, so that's why we are talking about it today.
Yes, and we're also going to touch upon the tools, because tools are important for the context in many ways. So for all of you Cloud Code users, let's use Cloud Code as an example. You start the session in a Cloud Code in your terminal. You want to do something. This session will have a context window of about 200,000 symbols, tokens, which will translate roughly into 0.75 amount of words. So if you multiply that by 0.75, roughly, that will translate to the words that you would type, that the model can keep in mind, if you like. Keep the attention on. And as soon as you put more into the session than the model can hold, it will start to throw away some of that. There are ways to manage the context window. So the models can either compact, so they will try to summarize what happened to give you the context window back. They can start just dropping stuff that it started from. There is another approach where they drop stuff from the middle. They keep the beginning and the end and drop stuff from the middle. So there are many ways of doing it. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is you don't want to reach the context window limit, because as soon as you do, the model starts to drop stuff. But also, the more stuff is in the context window, the more computation model need to do to come up with an answer. So it's like that's how the transformers work. Like they will put attention to everything that is in the context window. There are networks that have like a partial activation, but for the now, we just say, like, for simplicity, we'll say that it's paying attention to everything that is in the context window.
Yeah, I've seen this impacting a lot as well, the quality, right, of the answers. Like if you start reaching above 60% of the context window, you start seeing the answers start to not be as sharp anymore. Yes. Which makes it even like more important if you, depending on the kind of work that you're doing, right? If you keep feeding stuff to that session, at a certain point you can always see that the quality starts to degrade a lot.
Yeah, and I would say right now the name of the game in the agentic world, like managing context window and like doing all possible things to try to manage it effectively. And we're gonna tell you what actually eats into that context window just a second. But I wanna mention that obviously there is another direction that the frontier labs are going. They're trying to extend the context window. So I believe like the Gemini had the models with 1 million tokens of context window. The Anthropic is now testing the Sonnet and Opus with 1 million. So we're getting there. I mean, it's going to be bigger, but then I'm not really sure if the quality will stay the same. Like you could cram in more, but it have to be seen like if the quality will stay the same, because as Fernando mentioned, there is a degradation happening. The more stuff in there, the more probability of the degradation of the answers, and also performance. It takes more computation to run over the higher context windows. That's why those models are actually more expensive. It's like inference is more expensive when you're going over the threshold.
Yeah, with Claude Code, if you do like /model, right, to choose the model, you can see already the ones with the 1 million window, but they always put, there is an extra charge for this, right? And it's not cheap. It's like, I don't know, $10 per million token. So you could think like if you fill a session, then you actually pay $10 or 10 euros for that single session, right? So it can be quite pricey.
Exactly. So, and for that reason, like for instance, you can read about all those people who run the agents on a long session, multiple hour sessions. So they use different technique to make sure that those agents that run, they stay within their context window. And there are many techniques. Like for instance, you can be delegating the work to the sub agents. All of the tools nowadays support that. If you haven't tried, you can just say, run this task as a sub-agent. And what will happen is your current session will launch another LLM that will do the task, burn its context window, come up with an answer, and return back to you only what's necessary. And that allows you to actually maintain your context window, not expand it as much, comparing doing everything in one session. So this is like very popular way of doing that, just using your primary session where you're chatting as an orchestrator to orchestrate sub-agents that actually do the work and burn the tokens and use a context window, and then you're only getting a small portions of the information there. But you should say like what else eats in your context window. Obviously, it's your use, what you do with the model. On the start, you're going to get a system prompt. What is that, Fernando? What is a system prompt?
Yeah, the system prompt is basically what will help guide the tool and the agent to know who it is, right? Basically, like, and this is where you see tools, for example, I think in the beginning when you would think about cursor. So they would be using maybe even the ChatGPT kind of models, right? The frontier models, but their system prompt is basically what would make cursor be what it is, right? So, and this is also goes into the context, right? It's always going to the brain of the model, right?
And there is more stuff. So if your agent has access to tools, now this is when we talk to the tools, right? So agent needs to be able to do things, and it would load the tools either from the MCP servers, and a lot of people saying MCP servers is dead because agent now can effectively run the command line tools. Like for instance, the best example here, you can have GitHub MCP server configured and load tools from that, but instead of loading the tools, you can just ask the agent to run GitHub CLI locally, and it will achieve the same thing. So the MCP server handles authentication and API calling. You do the same with the CLI, and at the same time, you don't need to load all those tools into the context. So you're saving on the context, and also you're kind of using the same interface as you as a human would do, which is also more straightforward, and you can wrap it into scripts if you want.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a way to understand also how this eats the context of the model, right? Like for each MCP server that you connect, there's going to be a big description of what tools are available, what is that MCP server for, and usually those descriptions can be quite large. So then if you start, and before there was this idea, I'm going to connect all the MCP servers possible, so my session has like superpowers. But every MCP server would eat like 2,000 tokens, right? So you keep plugging. So before you even send the first message, 30% of your session is already gone. And then a little bit of messages, and then that's it, right? So this is something to remember. Every time you think about MCP, connecting MCP server, remember this as well, right? Like it's eating the context. And like Andrey mentioned, today there are nicer ways to do, more deterministic ways to do, with scripts that then the agent just loads a small description of a tool, like, oh, this tool allows me to talk to GitHub, for example. And then it's much smaller. And when I call it, a script runs behind the scenes that does things in a deterministic way, right? In a way like there is a logical step, and the outcome is always going to be the same. So that
again, like we're using LLM as orchestrator here, right? Like we're not trying to figure out how to run this and that. We just give a script, call the script, it will give you something back. Use it to call the next script or something.
Yes. When I started, I was exploring a lot with MCPs before, and then we started seeing this transition, right? And then the whole, which is connected to all of this, I think, is this idea of skills, right? Especially when you're dealing with the Claude code, like I hear a lot about skills, and it would be basically this idea of combining like certain description for the model to understand what this is about, and a set of scripts that then now can do the actual action, right? Like interact with the system or do something on your machine. And then you see how you can start selectively giving powers, right, to your agent to do things, as if we would be learning a skill to, I don't know, to fight or to swim or to speak a different language, right?
I actually suggest we do the next episode about skills, because there's like much more to say about them. So let's book a next episode for the skills completely.
Yeah, then we can go deeper into that. Yeah.
That's why you need to like and subscribe, so you get the notification about next one coming in. And so we cover the tools. So like as Fernando said, every tool will come with a description for the model or for the agent of when and how to use the tool. And that will eat into your context window. And another thing that's gonna eat into your context window is all the files you paste in a repository like agents, CloudMD, everything. So if agent is primed to load those, they will also eat into your context. So you have to be mindful about what you put in there and if it's really necessary to be there. There is even a research which shows that you don't really want to box in the agent, because like if you're putting in a very restrictive rules in your agents MD, CloudMD and all of that, then the model performing worse comparing to when it have freedom to decide the course of action. So you really want to be very liberal with those rules and less restrictive. Like it's the same as trying to manage the senior software engineer. Like you don't want to micromanage senior software engineer and tell them how to do it. Like you want to leave enough freedom to let it figure out what to do, but instead focus on the big picture and what needs to be accomplished, give it a context. So again, like the context is a little bit overused here in this particular conversation, and it's going to be overused even more. So now, like we're starting our session, right? We load the system prompt, we load the tools description if you have any, or like MCP servers. We load agents MD, we load like Cloud.md, what have you. Now we're ready to go. And then what comes in is your message, like the things that you want to have agent to work on or accomplish, or question you ask. What happened next is that like you might be asking part of your source code base in this repository, or something you have in the cloud, or what have you, but agents have no idea. The only idea it has is knowledge what was compressed into the model to that zip file that we are running, system prompt, tools description, agents MD. This is what it knows at the moment all of the sessions start, unless it has other superpowers that we can touch eventually. And now it needs to figure out what is it you are talking about, where it is, does it exist. So that's why like when you're running the cloud code and you say like cloud code, like let's do this, the first thing it's going to do is like, well, let's grab.
Exactly. Yeah. Then you see grab, which is basically trying to read everything and build the context, right? Like the context now of the local files and all of that again goes. But there it's interesting you touch on something, right? You see the kind of the sub agents doing the heavy lifting, and sometimes I see 60,000 tokens, 70,000 tokens, like in big projects, and then that gets compressed, but then it's up a lot of the orchestration session, right?
Just to get to the point,
just to understand, right?
Do something. So like it will need to gather all this context. Like for instance, I do see Kiro. They are very, very clever about that. Like Cursor is doing the same thing. I haven't seen Cloud Code doing much of that, but like Kiro and Cursor, they're explicitly running parallel sub agents to collect the information before they start. Cursor doing even more because Cursor has the data. Cursor basically runs embeddings of your code base, so it has a map, like a RAG, if you like. We will talk about RAG as well eventually. But it's not starting from scratch. It doesn't need to go and check every file to see what it is. It kind of have a recollection of what could be in those files. So it will fall back to that instead. It's much faster comparing to gripping and finding what Cloud Code does. Like Cloud Code, they have this decision that they decided that they're not going to build the memories in it. That's like architectural decision. That's how it works. It might change one day. What quite often people do, they bring in external memory to Cloud Code. This is like where you connect the vector database and allow Cloud Code or any kind of agentic tool to learn about what you are doing, what worked well, what doesn't, store it in the database, and then when it starts again, it will be able to search and pull from that database and teach itself about stuff that is maybe relevant for this session.
Yeah, I think this is still one of the big pain points, right? When you use Agentic AI for development work, like more specific to what we do, because every session you need to again kind of reteach Claude or whatever, like what we are talking about here. It gets better. I think my experience, like if you create some sort of support files, like you end the session and maybe you worked on like some core feature, maybe you can ask like, hey, before we end this, like create a markdown file here with like particular notes about this. And then later you can kind of selectively load those things when you touch that same feature again. But then you need to kind of manage that, right? I have seen some plugins, like there is a Claude Man, I think, which is like a memory for Claude, like Andrey was saying. but it's still kind of an ecosystem where people are trying to figure out like this bit of this pain point. But it's always this idea of like, how can we keep the context right more clean for the actual work, and not so much for like building up a bunch of context before you can actually do something.
But what people do is quite often, like you could hear people raving about the plan mode, and all the tools have the plan mode nowadays.
Yeah.
So what happens there is you run first agent, and responsibility of that agent is collect the information, build the plan, talk to you about the plan, and then you eventually have like a plan document that you can work on, and then that allows you to start a new session and feed that plan to the new session, start with a clear context, like so you have all the context available for actual coding or troubleshooting or whatever you're doing work. Another option like Cloud Code, for instance, offers you like a plan is ready. Do you want a clear context in this session? Mean like forget about everything we talked about here, just start with a clean context window that again will include system prompt, agents MD, the tools description, and the plan, and then you start working.
Yeah.
So that's like why this is why plan mode is useful, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think I use this a lot, and one thing that then I saw that there is always a trade-off on everything, right? But what I started doing very often now is, okay, I'm gonna work on a feature. We do the plan, we create the whole thing. Once it's done, completely done, then I do a /clear on Cloud Code, right? I clear the context, basically start fresh again for the next feature, because that I saw then the quality of the output is better. But the trade-off is that then every time the rebuilding the context about the application, the step we mentioned before, happens again and again, right? But the quality was better, like because of this. It's kind of, let's say, as if almost you worked for a full day, you go to sleep, next day head is fresh, and you sit down, okay, let me work on the next thing, right? But I think there is no like a bulletproof way still, right? For managing context is a little bit of this, like loading things when you actually need them. I had, for example, things that was automatically loaded. So once I just open a session, I did a like /context to see, and I saw like there was a bunch of stuff there already. So I did a session to just like, how can I clean my context to have less things? So it's an exercise, right? I think for people that are working on this, maybe do that, right? Check the context of a fresh session, just so you have an idea, like how clean is my session from the start, and maybe do some cleaning, some loading only when it's needed, just to see if you can get more out of your coding agent.
Yeah, for example, if you talk about the Boris, the way it works, you have a dynamic tool loading, which is a very popular concept. So on the start, it has a tools to actually discover what tools are available, but it doesn't load the tools prompt because like there's a lot of tools available to it. And then depending on the need, it will load the tool description to the context and start use the tool. There is like other tricks that people do. For instance, in all your agentic tools, you will see the tool use. So they're running the tool, but then the output of the tool is not being returned directly to the agent. It's actually saved into the tool output, and then the agent is able to recall what it did by reloading the tool output back into the context. And that's needed, like if you clear the context, but you're staying maybe in the same session, some of the tools are able to go back and like check what the tool outputs I have and read those to memory instead of running the tools again. So that kind of helps to manage this and stay on track. But yeah, there is many more things that you could do there, and we're going to talk about that next time. For now, I suggest we wrap up.
Yeah, so well, we hope some of these techniques will help you, and yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you
Bye bye.
in the next one. Bye.